Hey everyone, I'm Josh Loftus, and this is the Everyday Monday podcast, the podcast where we talk about everyday people doing everyday things in everyday churches. Whether you're a pastor, a plumber, or that person that tells the restaurant staff that it's someone's birthday when it really isn't, you're so funny. This podcast is for you. This is where we find value in the trenches of Christian life. Welcome to Everyday a Monday. And with me in the trenches today, I have a very special guest. We met literally about 3 minutes ago. So our friendship is new, and it's going to be new to you viewers as well. I have Caroline. Is it Bowes? Is that how you say it? Or Bowes?
It's Bowes. Yep, that's correct. Caroline Bowes.
All right. I have Caroline Bowes with me today. Caroline, thank you so much for being a guest with me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you for asking me. I really appreciate it. This is very exciting.
Cool. Well, Caroline, I knew I was going to do that. Okay, guys. So I even asked her before the podcast. I said, is it Carolyn or is it Caroline? And she goes, it's Caroline, but so many people call me Carolyn. I'm like, oh no. Okay. All right. I'll call you Caroline. And I just called her Carolyn. So it's going to be a fun adventure. But hey, Caroline, before we get going here, give us just kind of a short bio of who you are, what you do for a living. Just kind of tell us a little bit about you before we hop into our topics.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm not married. I'm single, 22 years old. I live with my family and parents still. I come from a family of 11 children. So 3 of them are married, and then we have I think 7 kids still at home. We've adopted 4 children, a sibling set of 2 kids. We adopted them as infants, and then a sibling set again a couple years later. They were 4 and 2 years old when we took them in. So we've got a very full, boisterous, amazing family. I love it. So I have been very passionate about pro-life work, partly because of my story. I'm actually a quadruplet. So my parents had my older sister, Lydia. She's 16 months older than us, and they had fertility issues for a while after they got married. So they got on some medication, conceived her, and then right after having her, they're like, it took us 6 years to get Lydia. Let's start again on medication, and hopefully we'll have another kid in 6 years. So they got on medication. Within like 2 months, they got pregnant again. And this time it was with quadruplets. So it was a huge shock to them.
Wow.
Yeah, they were feeling really blessed. They thought, this is God making up for lost time. It took us so long to get Lydia, and now we've got an instant family. So they were super excited. But as they were walking out of that ultrasound appointment, when they found out they had quads, the technician handed them a business card to the local abortion clinic, and she just flippantly said, "Oh, don't worry, he'll take care of it." And my parents were like, "What are you talking about?" And the doctor was in the room, and the doctor's like, it's just far too dangerous to carry quads full term. We suggest that you eliminate 2 pregnancies to give 2 pregnancies a better chance at life.
Oh, man.
And my parents were like shocked. Here they had just seen, those 4 beating hearts on the screen. They were super excited, and to be told that they need to eliminate 2 of those beating hearts was a bigger shock to them than seeing that they had quads. So thankfully, they continued forward. They trusted God. It's to make a very, very long story short. We were born at 32 weeks, all of us alive and well. I have 2 sisters and a brother, same age as me, obviously. So yeah, we're all doing great. And actually, 2 of the quads are married, and my brother's going to be married in September. So that kind of shaped my pro-life convictions and passion. Abortion came so close to taking my life, or the 2 lives of my siblings. So I felt called to go into pro-life ministry about 3 years ago, right after I turned 19. I felt God calling me to lead a 40 Days for Life campaign, and met with our local pregnancy care center executive director. Got to know her through that, and then she offered me a job at the Crisis Pregnancy Center. So all that to say, my occupation now, I work for a Crisis Pregnancy Resource Center. I'm the development director there. So I'm in charge of all of the donor development, fundraising, communications, kind of behind the scenes stuff. So I love it. It's really a blessing, and I'm grateful to work in a place that I feel very passionate about. So that's me.
That is so cool. That is quite the story.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for your work in that field. It is greatly needed,
yeah.
and I
Thank
definitely
you.
appreciate the people who are willing to give their time to do that. And so my first question then is what's the best and worst part about being a quadruplet?
Oh man, probably the best part, for sure, was always having siblings to play with and grow up with. Like whenever I was bored, I always had somebody to play with, and I think it was really cool just growing up, experiencing the same life things together. Experiencing becoming teenagers and adults and relationships and in marriage and all that, kind of experiencing all of that at the same time was really a blessing. Probably one of the the biggest challenges that we faced being quads was when we turned 16, and well, actually it was like 15 and a half, and we started doing driver's ed, and we all had to get 50 hours of drive time.
Yeah.
And we all wanted to drive whenever we went somewhere, so we had to share the car. That was awful. I'm like, no, I don't want to share it with three other people. So we had to like come up with this schedule and write down who drove last and how many hours they drove, and try to make it as even as possible. So that was kind of the hardest challenge, but overall, it's been awesome. I've loved growing up as a quad.
Yeah. Well, if that's the hardest challenge you got, then I think you guys are doing just fine for
Oh
sure.
yeah,
I think everything's okay.
I think we're doing
Yeah.
just fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, Caroline, give us just a little bit about how Christ found you. Kind of walk
Yeah.
us through a little bit of kind of what that looked like in your life.
Sure, yeah. So I've been blessed to grow up in a very Christian, Christ centered home all my life. Gone to church ever since I was an infant and, heard the gospel at a young age. Around 5 years old, I started just feeling the weight of my sin and my guilt, and was really starting to feel like I really need a savior. I am a terrible person, and I need the Lord. So my brother, actually, one of the quads, he started feeling the same way about the same time that I did. And one night I walked into his room and I saw him sitting on his bed, and he's just bawling, and mom and dad are sitting next to him, and I was hearing him pray, Lord, I just need you. I want you as my savior, and please come into my life. And my mom and dad were bawling, and they were, so excited, and we kind of celebrated together afterwards. So I watched that, and I was just really inspired and blown away by that. So the next day, I was just feeling still, like I've got so much guilt. I need a savior, and I want to become a Christian too, like my brother. And so I went on his bed because I'm like, well, he became a Christian on his bed, so maybe this is the place to do it. So I went and sat on his bed.
It's holy ground.
Yep, it's holy ground. Yeah, it's got to be the place. It's probably not the same if I do it on my bed.
Yeah.
So I went and sat on his bed, and yeah, and of course, as soon as I did that, just that huge weight of guilt was lifted, and so much joy, and so God is good.
God is good. Amen. Yep, for sure, for sure. So, transitioning a little bit into church, kind of the
Yes.
main reason and function of the podcast here is to encourage and facilitate service in the local church, right? So, the first question is, one, where do you go to church? And then two, what is it about your church? What is one aspect of your church that you really, really appreciate and value?
Yes, so I go to church at Shoestring Valley Community Church. It's a small community church about 30 minutes from where I live. There's about 150 members. And the thing that I love the most about it, I'd say, is that our pastor does expository teaching. So he goes through, a book of the Bible at a time, and he'll take, a few verses to a chapter at a time and just teach through the Bible. And he just cram packs his sermons with truth and cross references and scripture. So I feel like I always grow really well from that. So
Yeah, and that's so important too, especially in a culture today where so much of the churches are leaning more toward a seeker-friendly model, or
absolutely.
trying to change how they do things in order to cater to a certain group or a
Exactly.
certain mindset. And
Exactly.
it's not at all that we want our churches to be boring, right? That's not what we're going for. But there has to be some sort of
Yeah,
standard there, right? And
absolutely.
when I hear churches are committed to expository
Mm-hmm.
preaching and then making that the main
Yeah.
focus. That's always so encouraging because I know that the focus is correct,
Absolutely.
right?
That's such a good point because I think, with our seeker friendly churches, they tend to speak on topics, topical teaching, and they can kind of skirt around the
Sure.
controversial areas and the more difficult areas. So, expository teaching
Hmm.
covers it all. And, sometimes sermons are hard
That's
to
right.
hear, but it's good. We need that.
Yeah, oh, we do need it every Sunday.
Mm
Yep,
hmm.
for sure, for sure. Yeah,
Mm hmm.
that's excellent. So let's see. So Caroline, what are some of the primary ways that you are involved in your local church? How are you plugged into the local body there?
Yeah, so I've been attending there 14 years. I started serving on the worship team right after I turned 13. So my family's pretty musical. I have a sister that plays guitar, a sister that plays violin, a sister that
All
plays
right.
cello. My dad leads and sings, and I play piano. So we started doing that when we were 13, and I really did not want to. I was so nervous and felt like I was so not equipped to do it. And honestly, we probably sounded terrible when we started. But there were so
That's
many
okay.
people in our church that they were yeah, they were so encouraging, and they're like, it doesn't matter what you sound like. We're here to worship the Lord, and as long as you can play the song and help us worship, that's why we're here, and that's why you're here. So they were super encouraging, and thankfully we've grown, and I think we sound a little bit better now. So
Yeah.
so I do that, and then I also do greeting once a month. We have different teams of greeters that greet people as they come in the door, and then I also serve in the nursery just on the fifth Sundays of the year, so just like 5 times a year. So
Okay.
yeah, I love helping out where I can.
Yeah, and that's great.
Yeah.
All right. So how would you say when you think about your church there, and it's called Shoestring Community Church, right?
Yeah, Shoestring Valley. Almost got it.
Shoestring
Shoestring Valley
Valley.
Community Church, because we're
Okay,
we're we're nestled in the Shoestring Valley.
you're
So
in the
some people are
Shoestring
like,
Valley. I see.
shoestring? Why did you name it? Like, is your budget like a shoestring? Shoestring budget? Why did you name it that?
Everything's a
So
shoestring. Yeah, okay. Got it. Shoestring Valley. All right.
yeah.
Makes more sense. Makes more sense. I was
Yep.
honestly thinking the same
Uh
thing. Yeah,
huh.
that question was coming, but that's okay. Um,
Don't worry, you're
so
not the only one.
okay, all right, fair enough. So hey, so when you think about how your church facilitates service and encourages involvement uh, from
Hmm.
its members, right? Right. What are some of the I don't know if it's
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
messages from the leadership or just kind of the culture of the church and how they
Hmm.
want people to get involved. What does that look like
Hmm.
in your church?
Yeah. I'd say our church culture, just as it is, we're very servant minded. And our pastor has always really encouraged us to serve others, especially in the church, but also outside the church as well. He's,
Mhm.
really encouraged us to reach out to our neighbors and serve them as much as possible. And as far as like inside the church, we have a lot of different needs, of course, like every church has, with kitchen and serving and greeting and teaching Bible studies and doing the nursery and such. And my pastor's always encouraged everybody, like, if you are not plugged into one area of service in the church, figure out, pray about it. What is, the gifts and the talents and the abilities that God's given you, and plug yourself in somewhere, some way. And a lot of times we have different leaders for each area of service. So like, for instance, the nursery team leader recently, she went up and gave a little announcement, and she said, here are the slots that we need help, and I'd love to have this filled. And she'll pass around a sign up sheet in the service, and people will sign up for it.
Yeah.
So I'd say overall, our church, we do a good job of, really encouraging people to serve. And another thing that I really like that my pastor does too, he just kicked off a new members class. So he encourages people to become members. And then in that
Yes.
class, he talks about how important being committed to your church and
Yes.
serving your church is. And he says, if you're going to become a member, you got to serve somewhere. And
Mhm.
so plug yourself in. This is a part of being a member. So,
Yeah, kind of opening this up a little bit
mhm.
because, and I really enjoy that your pastor. I'm really thankful that he encourages service.
Mhm.
But as you know, as I know, we are fallen. We don't always have the correct motives and attitude towards service, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's in church or whether that's in work, right?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
You're in a work environment, especially in working in pro life services
Yeah.
where there are days where it can be great and amazing, and
Yeah.
there are some days where it can just be so discouraging,
Yeah,
right? And you
absolutely.
really have to be focused on your motives and your thinking as to why am I doing this? What is the
Absolutely.
purpose behind me serving,
Yeah.
right? What are the reasons I'm doing this?
Yeah.
So when you think about good and bad motives for service and working, whether in church or working the 9 to 5, right, as a
Mhm.
plumber, an
Mhm.
electrician, whatever it
Mhm.
is, what do you think are good and bad motives
Yeah.
for serving
Yeah.
the Lord in through our service?
Yeah, it's a really good question actually. I was just having a conversation with my coworker about this yesterday, and we were just talking about, like you said, how work can become at times so menial and so mundane, and we kind of get disconnected from what the purpose and the meaning is in our work. And as far as like motives, I
Yeah.
think for me, something that I've noticed as far as like a bad motive, especially in the workplace that I am at, where I'm kind of on stage a lot and I talk to people a lot and I'm communicating, I can have pride. That's a big struggle, and I think something that I have to deal with is
Yeah.
ego. Like, here I am doing this great thing, and serving the Lord, and
Right.
I'm up on stage and people know what I'm doing, and so I have to struggle, and fight that pride and that ego. And then sometimes I can get disillusioned, like, my work, I can almost look at it as like it's about me, but it's not. It's all about the Lord and serving our community. And really, I'm just a tiny little speck
Right.
in all of creation, and just the fact that God's put me in that place to work, and the fact that He wants to use me is a privilege and a blessing, and ultimately, God is the one that's going to be leading and providing and making this crisis pregnancy center work and stay working. So it's really not about me. It's just a blessing that I get to serve there. So as far
Yeah.
as like a bad motive, I think pride is a big thing that I struggle with. As far as good motives, I think just wanting to use our workplace as a platform to glorify the Lord and to share about Him is a good motive to have. I think no matter what you do, if you're listening on this podcast, whatever it is that you do, if you're, like Josh has said, like a plumber or an electrician, or perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
a stay-at-home mom, our work, if we have a biblical perspective, no matter where we work, no matter what we do, we can bring God glory, and we can serve Him, and we can make a
Yes.
difference in other people's lives. So, ultimately, our motive should be of service. Just like Jesus, He came to serve, not to be served, and to give His life as a ransom for many.
Right.
So our motive should be to be
Right.
just like Christ. We should serve no matter where we're at, and we can have so much joy in that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I could not have said it any better than that. We could wrap this podcast up with a bow right now and be done. But yeah, no,
Praise the
exactly.
Lord.
And what you said at the end, is actually, that is the key.
Yeah,
Is if we in our service,
yeah,
if we are looking at Christ as our example, if we're looking at how He lived His life, how He interacted with people around Him,
absolutely.
and how He conducted Himself,
Yeah,
humility through service, through selfless actions, right? And it's those Christians, Caroline, like when I think about Christians that I admire, both ones that I've read or listened to, or that are honestly in my life right now, right?
yeah,
I think about those Christians, and I think about the traits that they possess that inspire me to
yeah,
want to follow Christ more,
yeah,
right? I think of the humility that they have,
yeah,
the willingness that they have to not be seen and to
absolutely.
not be heard, but to serve quietly behind the scenes
Yeah,
because they love people,
yeah,
right? I think about the joy that they have in doing what many, and honestly myself in so many occasions, would consider to be pretty mundane
absolutely.
tasks,
Yeah,
right? And just have like, how
yeah.
can you have such joy
I
in them,
know, I
right?
know.
I
It's
think about those
amazing.
Christians that inspire me to do that.
Yeah,
um, who are those Christians for you?
yeah,
Who are the Christians for you that inspire you to want to follow Christ
yeah,
more than you do now?
yeah.
And what are the traits that they possess that really inspire you to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one woman especially that comes to mind when I think about a Christian that I want to live my life like. And this sweet lady, her name is Becky Jacobson. She's been a member of our church for as long as I can remember. She's probably in her 50s, and She has those same, character quality traits that you mentioned, where she loves to serve behind the scenes, doing the mundane things that I probably wouldn't want to do, and she doesn't want any recognition for it. Like, there have been times where I've heard, Becky Jacobson, like, for instance, one of my neighbors said recently, yeah, she just took, my neighbor, and she took her to the hospital because she had a doctor appointment and she couldn't drive, and that was such a blessing. And so I'll go up to Becky at church and I'm like, hey Becky, I just heard you did this and that's so kind of you. And she'll be like, oh, thank you. And then she'll say something sweet to me like, oh, I love your hair. Or, oh, how are you doing? Or what's going on in your week? Like, she completely turns it around to talk about you. And she's so others focused. Like, she doesn't care if I ask her about her life or what she's doing. And she doesn't want people to know what she's doing, because probably everything
Right.
she does in her life is serving. Like, sometimes I'll walk into church and she's making a batch of cookies in the church kitchen for somebody that had a rough week or something. She has a couple different leadership roles in our church. She's constantly helping out her neighbors, serving people in the church that need rides to doctors or to get groceries. She does so much. So she just inspires me, I guess.
Yeah.
That those traits of constantly looking for ways to serve others, even outside of the church, but especially in the church, and then serving with humility and not wanting recognition, because she truly recognizes that her reward is in heaven, and she doesn't want that reward to be taken by the praise of men. I don't know what that, I can't remember that verse, but it talks about, if you do your works to be seen by men, that is your reward. But do your works, where no one
Right.
sees, and your
Right.
reward in heaven. So that's what she's going for. And I love it. I want to live like that. So it's such a blessing.
Oh, it sure is. Yeah. Yeah. Well, shout out. What's her name again? Becky Jacobson.
Becky Jacobson. Yep.
All right. Well, shout out to Becky Jacobson. You'll have to send her the
Yeah,
podcast.
I
And
should.
well done, ma'am. You are an
Yes.
inspiration to us.
Yes.
Thank you for showing Christ to your congregation.
Yes.
That is,
I will do that.
whenever I hear that, like, this is honestly one of my favorite questions, because I really enjoy hearing the stories about how other people have
Yeah.
influenced my guests and how they've inspired my guests. And it always, there is a trend that that all of them have, and it really is humility. It's
Yeah.
it's selflessness,
Absolutely.
and it's just a desire to show
Absolutely.
Christ. And
It doesn't have to be in a position or with a title or anything. If we have that mentality, imagine how amazing our churches would be if we all did one act of service every Sunday for our community in our church. That'd be amazing.
yeah, it would, right? And that is the perfect scenario. And I think that is something that we can be working toward,
Yeah.
right? As
Yeah.
people are looking to Christ as their example and realizing that community in church and serving in church, that honestly is one of the most important things that we as Christians can be doing.
Yeah.
And with those experiences come some pretty funny moments or
Yeah.
pretty unforgettable experiences, right? If anybody who's been in church for any amount of time knows that it can be a very awkward place
Oh
sometimes,
my
and that's
goodness.
fine. It's
Yeah.
okay. We work through the awkwardness.
Oh
So,
man.
what's one of the funniest or most unforgettable experiences you have ever had?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I can think of a couple. I've got two that are probably the most unforgettable. I don't know. Can I share two?
You sure can. Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So the first one I would share is we were leading worship as a family, and we'd probably only been doing it for about a year, so we weren't super practiced and weren't the greatest sounding.
Sure.
And we started playing this new song. It's "Take My Life," and it's a new arrangement by Chris Tomlin. And there's a bridge in the middle of this song that we kind of go high. It's like "Take my life," so you go kind of high, and we're not used to doing that. So, but we thought, okay, we're gonna give it a try. We'll see if we can do this. So we start playing the song. It's all going great, wonderful, amazing, and we get to the bridge. And we just came to this complete train wreck. It was like the most distracting, annoying, terrible, horrible train wreck, and we all stopped, and everybody's just kind of awkwardly standing there. And thankfully my daddy has a sense of humor, and he's like, well, we made it to the bridge, but we fell off of it.
Yeah.
And everybody just started laughing hysterically. And somebody's like, well, what do you do when you fall off a bridge? You get back on it. So we tried again. We got back on the bridge and we kept on going, and it was great. So that was a hilarious moment. And then the other story that I have is when I was greeting one morning, me and my sister were greeting together, and there was a man in our congregation that had diabetes really bad, and he just recently had an amputation, and he was getting a prosthetic leg, and he'd come to church that Sunday. I didn't see him walk in, but I wanted to say something to him and encourage him. So I was greeting, and I saw this man walk by me, and he had long pants on, so I couldn't see his prosthetic. And he walks by me, and he was walking great. He had a little bit of a limp. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you're walking so good. Good job. And this man, he turns and he looks at me, and he kind of has this quizzical look on his face. And he kind of like says, oh, thank you. And he kept on walking, and he went to the bathroom or something. And my sister, she looks at me, and she's like, why did you just say that? And I'm like, he just had a prosthetic leg and he's walking really good. And my sister's like, no, that's, Mr. Waddle. I can't remember his name. I'm like, oh no, that's terrible. So now he thinks like, do I walk weird or something? He's probably going to be watching himself now as he walks by windows, like out on the street, and he walks by a window. He's like, do I walk weird? Like, why did she say I'm walking good?
Like, do you always greet people at church like this? Like, is this your go-to greeting?
Yeah, hi, judge people on how well they walk.
That's right. Welcome to Shoestring Valley Church. You are walking so well today. Good job.
So good. Yeah, just a little bit of a limp. You could work on that, but
yeah, you can work on that. But that's okay. None of us here are perfect. It's all right. That's funny. That's one of those awkward experiences. That's those. Oh man, I live for those. Those are fantastic. Oh man, that's funny.
Yeah, that was great. My family will never let me live that down. They always bring that story back up. So,
and as they should. It's a good story. It's a good story. All right. Well, Caroline, we have almost come to the end of the podcast, but not yet. Now's it's the Monday hot takes, and this is where I ask you a bunch of random questions, and you give me the first thing that pops into your head. You ready for these?
Oh boy, fun!
All right, we'll start with an easy one here. Give me your favorite band or favorite musical artist.
Sidewalk Prophets, a Christian artist. I love them.
Oh my goodness, you're going old school. Okay, I like that a lot. Coffee or tea?
Coffee for sure.
All right. How do you like your coffee?
Oh boy, I like it where it doesn't actually taste like coffee.
Oh,
it has to be
like
very
sugar.
Sweet and lots of cream, lots of sugar, lots of cream.
Milkshakes. Yeah.
I actually, they're sort of like milkshakes, but actually what I usually get is a spiced chai tea latte. So it's actually half coffee, half chai tea, and it's super like sweet and flavorful and creamy, and that's my favorite.
Oh boy. Okay, that's fine. If you could close one fast food chain, which one would it be?
McDonald's. Yeah.
Really?
McDonald's. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Caroline. What is something that you have tried that you will never ever try again?
What's that sauce? Like horseradish sauce? Oh my goodness! I tried this at a Chinese restaurant. It's this white sauce that comes with like a little bit of sweet and sour sauce and sesame seeds, just supposed to like dip your Chinese food into it.
Right.
Oh my goodness! I tried just the tiniest little bit of that sauce, and it tastes like a permanent marker that is extremely hot. It like burned my tongue, and it felt like I was eating a permanent marker. Terrible.
So I have so many questions. One, that is the greatest description I've ever heard. It tasted like a permanent marker that was really hot. Second question, my question is, how do you know what a permanent marker tastes like, Caroline?
I have no idea, actually. I just like the way it smells, I'm sure.
Sure, yeah.
No, I've probably tasted permanent marker as a kid, I'm sure.
It tasted like a hot permanent marker.
I promise you, I do not eat permanent markers. That is not my go-to snack.
Okay, all right, good to know. Yeah, I mean, I'm not judging, but you might want to stop if it is. Okay, let's see. All right, Caroline. In what situation or place would you find yourself most out of place in?
Most out of place. Okay, that'd be a church youth group. There we go.
Really?
Okay, so I grew up like learning how to talk to adults and like older people, like people in their 80s and 90s. And those are my friends, because we didn't really have like a youth group at our church, and there weren't a ton of young people. So whenever I'm around young people, I like don't even know how to talk to them, because I know how to talk to adult people and carry on normal conversations. But I guess young people, they kind of intimidate me with they're fun and they're silly and they have a blast, and I don't know how to do that. I'm like, give me a deep conversation. I don't know how to be a goofball. So I would feel like a fish out of water.
You realize you are a young person, right? You're only 22.
I know. It's terrible.
That's fine. That's okay. That's all right.
I'm learning.
Yeah. Right on. Very cool. Okay. All right. What is one food that you wish was a health food? So you can just eat it all the time.
Ice cream. I wish I could eat ice cream all the time. I love it.
What's your go-to ice cream flavor?
Chocolate chip cookie dough. That's the best.
Boy, I might have to agree with you on that one. Cookie doughs. Oh, that's usually what I go for as well.
Cool.
That's good stuff.
Oh yeah, it's the best.
Okay. What's your least favorite food?
Least favorite food? Sushi. That'd be my least favorite. That's probably a common answer, but I've tried it once and I will never try it again.
So what's one country you would most like to visit?
Oh, Africa. I would love to visit Africa. I love the people, love the culture, love everything. I love the animals.
Very cool.
I just think it'd be so cool to visit there. So
let's see. What's the worst part about being on a podcast?
Having a guy ask you questions that you don't know how to answer. That's the worst part.
Strangely enough, that's the answer most people get. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. What's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Oh boy. I really like the movie called Master and Commander. Have you heard of it?
Yes, with Russell Crowe.
Oh,
so good. Yep, I agree.
I love that movie. The music is the best in it. The violin and cello music. I seriously would just watch the movie just to listen to the music. I love that. But I really like the cellist, the doctor. I love his personality and perspective on life. And Russell Crowe, of course, is awesome. So, yeah. No, honestly, the guy that plays the doctor, his name is Paul Bettany, and he is one of my favorite actors. Oh, what are some other movies that he plays in? Do you know?
So, did you ever see the movie Inkheart?
Oh, I don't think I did. No.
He plays a character called Dustfinger. You should see.
Okay.
You should watch Inkheart. That's a good movie. And he's in the Avengers movies. He plays Vision.
I didn't realize it was that actor. That's cool. Now I'll watch it again and I'll know who the actor is. That's cool.
Let's see here. Last question.
Okay.
What's your go-to karaoke song?
Go-to karaoke song. I honestly have only sang karaoke like once, and the song that we did was, what was that song? It's like a love song. Call Me Maybe, I think was what it's called. Call Me Maybe. I don't even know how it goes, and I don't know that song because I'm a conservative, like sheltered homeschool Christian girl. So I was like doing watermelon the whole time.
I hate that tune so much because it's an earworm. It gets in your head and you're like,
you can't get it out.
No, change the channel, turn the radio off, something.
It's stuck in your head.
It's so bad. Caroline, we have come to the end of the podcast officially. I greatly appreciate you being on with me. Thank you so much for coming on as a guest.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Josh. I really appreciate it. This has been really fun, and I appreciate your wisdom and your insight and encouraging people to serve the Lord wherever they're at. So keep up the good work.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Well, everyone, you guys know what to do. You can head on over to iTunes and give this podcast a raving review and a 5-star ratings. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Music, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. You can head on over to Facebook.com/EverydayMondayPodcast, Instagram @EverydayMondayPod. And thank you all for joining us in the trenches today. And we will catch you on the next step of Everyday a Monday.